What up, everybody? This is Mr. View, and I'm back with some world history stuff. Last week, we dove into the Industrial Revolution, and most of you did a great job with your assignments. I will reiterate, that means tell you again, I don't want late assignments. You have generally 28 hours to get these things done. They're 15, 20, maybe half-hour assignments. You have no problem getting it done in that 28 hours. So usually stuff is due at noon on the next day. So that gives you a full day plus 4 hours to get everything done. So make sure you're getting your stuff done and on time. I absolutely understand when people get sick or they've got something big come up. As long as you let me know in advance, this is what's happening. I have a heart, believe it or not. But I don't want you just handing late assignments in for no reason. So those are hard and fast deadlines. I expect you to get your stuff done. It's not that hard. All right. So today we're going to be moving on to some socialism stuff that's affecting the United States of America right now. But before we do that, I want to kind of review what we talked about last week. We talked about the Industrial Revolution and how it was generally 1750 to 1850. It started in England. It started because of an agricultural revolution, a population explosion, and new energy sources. We talked about how the world changed from maybe cottages to apartments and candlelight to light bulb and from bartering to actually money and doing that kind of system. We talked about urbanization and people moving to the cities because they weren't needed as much on the farms. And that grew the cities, but the cities were a problem area. They had no sewage systems, no lights at night. There was no running water. There was crime, all these things with the cities. We also talked about early factories and how those were kind of a train wreck and how they treated women and kids, but they had super long shifts, 12 to 16-hour shifts, no safety devices. People got tired, they got hurt, they got sick. Bam, they just lost their job. There were no safety things for workers, no pensions, etc. Then we learned about the Luddites and how they revolted against machines. They said that they were taking jobs, and that was an issue because when they would attack factories or factory owners, they would be put to death. We learned about one 12-year-old boy that was put to death as a result of his involvement with the Luddites. So today, things aren't like that anymore, right? So we are changing. We are getting to where we are today. It starts to change with labor unions. Labor unions are organizations of workers. So, like the teachers have a union, right? We have a labor union. We all got together and we said the wages need to be this, the hours need to be this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so we got together and we formed this group that was a tight knit group. And if the school system or whatever, we don't like what's going on, we might sit down and bargain with them. So labor unions bargain. They had the right to bargain. They developed this right. They bargained with wages, hours, and conditions. So some safety conditions started to pop up in all these factories, and things generally got better. People weren't slaves to the factory as much, right? So this was a big deal back then. Now labor unions, there are different feelings a little bit about unions protecting bad workers and things like that. So some people have strong feelings on both sides of that. Adam Smith, he wrote The Wealth of Nations. And in this, he talked about a free market. And a free market means that there are no caps or restrictions on businesses, that it's basically survival of the fittest. I have a factory and Mr. Withers has a factory and we're building the same stuff. It's a dog eat dog world, and whoever produces the best stuff, maybe at the lowest price, they survive, and the other person, like Withers, would die out. So it's a free market. This is a capitalist idea. Capitalism means that you can privately own businesses and they're for profit. This is what the United States is, right? We're a capitalist country with some socialist ideas, but we're a capitalist country. We have a lot of different businesses owned by a lot of different people, and some of them get extremely rich, right? And some of them don't quite make it. But capitalism, that's privately owned businesses for profit. This does create a divide between the rich and the poor. There's no two ways about it. Elon Musk has a lot of money. Bill Gates, a lot of money. Walmart, those dudes, a lot of money. The Walton crew, right? So it creates competition, but it also creates a divide between the rich and the poor. One of the ideas of our founding fathers was to pull yourselves up by your bootstraps, right? You can go from rags to riches depending on how hard you work. That's a capitalist idea. So if you work really hard, if you get a good education or whatever, you can become a millionaire too. Or if you get $1 million idea, right? You create something. Socialism does not see it that way. They do not want privately owned businesses. The people own everything, right? So, and generally, it's the government that owns everything, and then they dole it out to the people, dole money out to the people as the workers. So the people as a whole don't. The people as a whole own the businesses, not a single person. So Elon Musk, he wouldn't own anything, right? It would be the government owning it. Bill Gates wouldn't own Microsoft. The United States would own it, and then from there they would dole out money to people, right? The government would own everything. This tries to benefit everybody and keep everybody equal. So you wouldn't have the rich people living in palaces and the poor people living in ghettos. You would have everybody living in the same stuff, wearing basically the same clothes, driving the same cars, et cetera, et cetera. So you're not having the top tier, you're not having the bottom tier, you're having everybody right here. That's what socialism is, right? They want equity or equality for everybody. The problem is it just doesn't work. The problem is with these communist socialist countries, like thinking about China or North Korea or the old Soviet Union, which collapsed under communism. It doesn't work because of the lack of incentive, right? People need that incentive to work hard. If I don't work very hard and Mr. Withers is working his butt off, but I'm going to get the same wage, why would I work real hard? If there's not money at the end of it or some kind of incentive, human nature just basically says we're not going to get work as hard as we need to, maybe. So there's a big problem when everybody gets the same stuff and it's handed to us, right? We find out that a lot of people will be really lazy if they're just given stuff outright. And that's one of the things about socialism, because they want everybody to survive and do really well. But it leads to big problems. Why invent something if I'm not going to become a millionaire? If the government's going to get rich out of it as opposed to just me. So that lack of incentive is a big deal with capitalism and socialism. Nobody's getting rich in socialism except the people who make the decisions. The government generally hands the stuff out to make everybody equal, but they have the best homes and they do this certain things. So this socialism stuff is very tough. Communism is basically the same thing. Karl Marx wrote the Communist Manifesto, in which he said that the labor unions and the workers had the power, and if they united, things would be great and they could control everything. Ideally, that'd be perfect. If everybody worked really hard and you could build everything up and achieve greatness, awesome. Then it might work. The problem is it just doesn't generally work that way. Communist societies generally just don't work. There's lack of choice. You're not going to go to a store and have 40 different choices for candy bars necessarily, or chips or whatever. It's basically going to be government chips, government candy bars, and there might be a little bit of variety, but it's all owned by the government. So you don't have the different companies that own stuff because the government controls everything. Okay. In socialist societies, the taxes are really, really high, right? Because you give your money to the government and then they dole it out to everybody else. So the taxes in a lot of these socialist countries are 70-80% versus what we have in the United States, 20 to 30%. So it's very different in socialist societies versus capitalist societies. In the USA, as I said, we are capitalist with some socialist policies, right? We have socialist policy would be free education, which we have K-12. We do not have in college. There's also some socialist ideas for welfare and things like that. With that, we do not have socialist policies such as free healthcare for everybody or free college for everybody. Those are some policies in other countries that have taken hold, right? Democratic socialists in our country, the socialist angle is kind of rising in the United States. guys like Bernie Sanders, women like AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. These are democratic socialists who want to bring these socialist ideas into America. And they have gotten a lot of followers by saying stuff like, everybody needs this wage, right? We're going to set the wage for everybody, or everybody needs free college, or everybody needs free this or that. So there is a growing number of democratic socialists in our country. And then there's a lot of fervent people who just believe in capitalism and don't want any part of socialism. So I know I kind of rambled a little bit long today, but that's all right. There's a small video, and then I want you to do a chart saying capitalism, socialism, and tell me 5 things about each group. 5 things about capitalist, 5 things about socialist. That's your assignment for today. Have a great day, everybody.